How much of the culture is in the hiring versus in the building of the team that's there?
The hiring is an absolutely critical piece of the puzzle. You don't necessarily need to find someone who fully embodies all of your values today, but you do need to find someone who has, arm's reach capacity to embody those values and a desire to do so, meaning that they feel inspired by what your values are. It doesn't matter what your values are. I've seen, just vastly, different purposes and values, but you want to find someone who actually says, yeah, I applied for 5 jobs. I'm going to go with you because you're paying me $10K more. You want to find the person who's like, I'm actually going to take a little bit of a less salary to work with you because of the 5 companies I worked with, I most resonate with your purpose and values. Like that's the person you want to hire. And then of course you want to test to see, not just say, hey, how do you relate to this value, but you ask them to tell stories that through them telling, you can say, okay, this is someone who gets it, who I think is going to be a really good fit on the skill side, on the culture side, et cetera. But that said, culture is so powerful. You take the same person and put them in 2 vastly different companies, they're going to show up differently. And biologically, we couple to the kind of habits, practices, beliefs, narratives of the people around us. It's actually not something we have choice over. It's actually automatic. I mean, think about, we speak English because we were born in an English speaking country. We didn't choose to speak English without an accent. It's really difficult if we go over to France and try to learn French at my age, for example, which I have tried to do, not unsuccessfully. And so the same thing happens in culture. You put people into a culture and they affect the culture and the culture affects them. But more often than not, if the culture has a very strong center of gravity, it will affect that person over time. But again, you don't want to take someone who's 180 degrees opposed to the culture and bring them in because that will create problems and friction for sure.
Will you bend the rules or will you allow it to be less of a value or culture fit if the skill set is higher for an executive? How does it vary from entry level to exec?
Oh man, I think for executives, the bar has to be even higher on the cultural standard because the executives are going to have a fairly sizable and visible influence in the organization. And if you hire somebody who is counter value, the problem with any counter value activity in an organization is, and this goes back to that exercise I would do with these CEOs where I'd get them in a room, I'd say, let's put on a whiteboard your 4 values, 5 values, 6 values. I want you to each rate on a scale of 1 to 10, how aligned and alive do you think that value is? And I would have people say, yeah, we're probably a 4 out of 10, maybe a 3 on that one, maybe a 6 on that one. The problem is if everybody has that same sense, if you have a gap anywhere more than, a 7 out of 10, what happens is you start to breed cynicism inside the organization. And what people say is, that's just BS they put up on the wall. They don't actually mean that. And, they don't have integrity. And, I don't think they have integrity about anything. And you start to have, just real cultural breakdown. And so that's where I think it's so important to hire executives who embody the values or are committed to it. The other thing is 1 year we had grown the company from 70 to 200 people in 12 months. So we hired 130 people from a base of 70. And at the time, we did not really have our hiring practices dialed in. And we went through a period where it was clear we had made some mistakes. The wrong people essentially opted out, but it created some challenge and headaches in the organization. We're much more on top of it now. But it was this moment where like, oh my God, the market's here, the money's here, we got to move. And we've got to hire, net 130 new people in 12 months. And so I learned a lesson kind of the hard way there. And we did bring on a number of incredible people who are still in the organization today, but we did make some mistakes. And so I do think if you're ever going to be in that situation where you're, going to be making, an inflection point of hiring, or even if you have, a good amount of people hiring in the coming year, to really sit down and think through how are we going to create a rigorous process to make sure we get right fit people, both in terms of culture and skill set, and what are the checks and balances, especially if the hiring is distributed across a lot of different hiring managers.